Hello, everyone. It's Adrienne Rivera. Welcome back to the Breath of Gold Festival. Today, I'm really excited and fortunate to be here with the lovely Solara Rose, who is a spiritual advisor and energy master. Welcome.
Aw, thank you, love.
Yes, I'm so excited for this beautiful conversation. I'd love for you to start by sharing a little bit about the work that you do and how
Yeah.
you got into doing the work that you're currently doing.
Yeah, of course. So that is a massive territory to cover. So I'm gonna, as it is for so many of us, it's just, so we'll go for it in the most potent synthesized way possible. So what I teach now is illumination, self-realization, just awakening to the reality of the oneness of love's presence operating everywhere simultaneously. And it has been a wild and winding journey to this space. Many deeply profound and catalytic moments in my life experience, numerous spiritual awakenings, Kundalini awakening, more of a Satori awakening at different stages, and things that were really multiple years of unraveling my unconscious programs and narratives and identities of who that I thought that I was. And, breath work actually is a massive support because when we're in those spaces of really transfiguring consciousness and becoming aware of who we are at the ultimate level, there is a deep quiescence and surrender that is called forth from us. Like, be in the space, be in the stillness, be in the silence, let go of the mind generated concepts of who you think that you are, and allow, the light of soul and truth and divinity to emerge. And so, just really powerful experiences, loss, transformation of my world on numerous occasions where many of us have had this experience where it all feels like it is completely dissolving and falling apart. We're shifting identity, we're shifting relationship, we're shifting our occupation in the world, our service, all of this. And in those moments when we're at the edge, it's, who am I? What am I? What's next? And there's this invitation to really trust fall into, the majesty of love and allow ourselves to be held and lifted. And then ultimately entering the space of recognizing, I am the I am presence. And so I have this profound opportunity to hold myself, to embody the kingdom. And so, many events that have led into that grand unfoldment and merging into the oneness of the self. And so, I guide people into that space of self recognition, and pure power is the infinite artist of their life.
So incredible. I love this. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'd love for you to share more about what it means to live life spiritually connected, because I think a
Mm.
lot of people feel like they are, but I'm curious, what is your definition? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the space of recognition, it's attuning to the isness of reality itself. Love is superabundance, is benevolence, is life, is all that is, and it's always here now. So we can't ever be truly disconnected. I mean, our mind comes in and has these perceptions and narratives that may inhibit us in certain moments from feeling that connection. But in truth, everything is one, everything is united, operating in accord with the one perfection of reality, the divine design. It's just a matter of, are we aware of that and feeling that in any given moment? So for me, it's a daily devotional internal cultivation of that pervasive harmony and oneness and recognition of love's presence, and then being able to move and dance and play and walk with that realization in our embodiment in the world, be able to resonate it, feel it. So, I mean, it does require that cultivation. Otherwise, we can start to become more attuned to the noise of the world than to the symphony of source. And I think it's just in any moment, am I attuned to the truth of reality, or am I attuned to the perceptions and narratives of the world?
Mm, hmm I love that. Yes. And when you say the isness, I think about like the am, the I am, like
Yeah.
being a full, complete sentence, right? It just is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So, what has been one of your like biggest shifts that you've had, either intellectually, spiritually, something that maybe happened in your life, or maybe you were in a spiritual experience where since then you've seen things from a whole new perspective?
Yeah, so this is actually going to be so relevant to many beings who are listening to this gorgeous interview. It's this threshold that many beings straddle between, it's this very nuanced space of recognizing that I am the source, or I am an individuated aspect of source having a relationship with the source. And so there's this nuance, and this was a huge shift in orientation for me, how I actually orient, what is my positionality and my center as I navigate and dance this dance of life. And so when there's this subtle duality of self other, self and source, there's still a minor divide in our consciousness that's taking place between I am the power, or I am a power in communion with the power. And so, but that subtle, that nuance of I and other can create, it's a differential between us operating from pure power and us dividing our power. So it was really me coming into this center of gravity within my own creationary field of actually I am that I am, and my energy is extending into the all and transforming everything in my reality from the inside out. It's not me communing with a higher power, a greater power, a separate source. It's me being the source and then honoring the source that I am in all beings and all life, and really being in communion with my own self and my own essence reflecting everywhere. And so I there can be a space of disempowerment for some people when they're attempting to create from a space of I and source, because we tend to, instead of inhabiting the fullness of our power at the center of our creation, we can actually subtly start to give our power away to source, to a concept of what we think source is, in the asking, in the requesting, in these spaces we get into, instead of just actually embodying the resonance of who we are in truth, which is actually our ultimate creative power. And so one of the most significant shifts for me that actually required 2 years of like sitting with it, resonating with it, contemplating it, like really rooting into it, was coming from the heart and the center of the I am in my own embodiment, and realizing there is no external source. There is no power greater than me. I am that power. That means I'm fully accountable and responsible for every single thing that shows up inside of my creation, because it's a reflection of my being and my embodiment, and really just taking full ownership of that and choosing to be who and what I am, we are. So that shift in orientation. Mm.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that perspective. That's really fascinating. And what about like spiritual practices?
Yeah.
What practices have been most supportive for you? I know you've mentioned breath work, which I love. We've obviously talked about a lot of breath work during this journey, but yeah, would love to hear what your practices are. I see this with all people, having a morning practice, having go-to practices for grounding, for self-connection, for self-love are highly important, and would love to hear from you which ones you practice and what you found to be supportive.
Yeah, so it's really a balance between two elements that are incredibly complementary yet opposite. So there's the space of really just being in stillness and silence and emptiness, where it's like I give myself at the altar of my true self, like any and all things that are not, or the not self, I lift the personal self into the truth of the I am. And it's really just about emptying and being with the breath, feeling the breath as it oscillates and pulses through the body, activating sensory awareness and intelligence in the body. So not engaging the conscious or the super conscious mind to necessarily create or enact my will or set forth like intent for my experience. It's just being in the stillness, emptying, allowing the breath to illuminate from within, because the breath is the animating principle. So filling myself with the breath, creating space for the light to emerge, and allowing, whatever mental concepts I've collected to kind of just dissolve back into the light of pure awareness. So that's one: emptiness, silence, stillness, beingness. And then the other one that's really prominent, and I just engage such prolific streams of consciousness where I'm actively um, deepening my embodiment, and simultaneously, by virtue of that, I'm creating my experience. So we can, like, I am activations is just a very simple way to put it. It's resting in the center of my I am presence and reinforcing and reminding myself of the truth of who I am, so that I can walk in this world in the majesty of that embodiment. I am infinite love, life, light, truth, prosperity, innocence, purity, benevolence. And I'm just feeling the fullness of my being as existence as I'm doing that. And I'm really just, it serves as an activation of remembrance, so that I can actually move and walk in this world with that truth. So all things that I know myself to be as the energy of pure source, that's what I'm activating in that space. And I do a quite an ornate blessing sequence every single day, where I work through all of the energetic vortices or the chakra system, and I extend that energy into my world, my legacy, my loved ones, my finances. And I really just, I shower my creation with reverence and appreciation and divine love from my heart space. And yeah, just bless the totality.
Mm. Yes, I love that. Like blessing everything, being in gratitude, feeling appreciation for what is. One of the things
Mhm.
you mentioned is like you're showering all of it, including your finances. I'd love for you to share your perspective on finances. I think in this human life, finances can be a great cause of how we live our lives. Most of the time, the access to financial resources determines our lifestyle in many ways. It could be a source of stress for people. It could be a source of, materialism for people. It's fascinating. And what have you learned? How has your perspective on finances shifted since you've deepened your own spiritual journey?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, one, I've like just owned it and claimed it so much more. Like when I became aware of myself and really the power of manifesting through realization, because all that's happening when we're manifesting anything is we're recognizing what is already here, and we're putting it into the now. And so for me, it's just like I am the wealth of eternity. And thank you, life. Thank you, self, for ceaselessly bringing me infinite wealth, infinite money, infinite prosperity, infinite resources, and prolifically supplying me. So I go directly to like the realization that everything is a manifestation of light. It's all prosperity, it's all abundance, and it's really just how we're looking at life. Am I missing something? Am I lacking something? Or am I whole and complete as the self in a space where nothing can be added to or taken from me? So I'm really like residing in my wholeness of actually the ultimate fulfillment of wealth is realizing who I am and feeling the majesty and the power and the pervasiveness of my I am presence. And then from that space, it starts to translate into money. And to be more precising, I mean, everything is an outpicturing, so to speak, of our consciousness. So it's like the moment that we start to like recognize that we are the wealth of eternity, and then also that there's a source energy is infinite. Like we are infinite, limitless fountains of wisdom and brilliance and energy. And we can just define what that is. And so to just thank you, life, that I am a multimillionaire. Thank you, life, that I am infinitely supplied. And it works because I am all of those things. And so, just bringing it right into the now and giving thanks for it and affirming it and really realizing there is no lack. There is nothing that any of us lack. And if we're looking at life from the perspective of gratitude, I mean, we'll really start to realize how much we actually have. And I would even say the more wealthy I become, the more simply I live, because there's so much more recognition of the abundance and the prosperity that is already here. So I think the major shift for most people is getting out of that lack and scarcity consciousness. And that can present itself in many, many ways. And it really, the core of it is I am not enough. I am not enough. I do not have enough. I am missing something. Something's not here. I desire something outside of my fulfillment of self that causes me to seek for the thing that I think will fill that void of self knowledge. And that could be money, it could be relationships, it's just so many things that that translates into, but it's resolving that into actually, I am more than enough. I am the limitless creator. I am limitless love. And when we really know that and we root into that wholeness inside, it's a unified, energetic, everything will begin to bloom and prosper in our lives.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective. And I'd love for you to speak more into like fear. I think a lot of people have fear, especially around the unknown, right? They could feel really abundant right now, and maybe they've gotten to a point in life where they're coasting. Things are easy, they're within their comfort zone. But
Yeah.
maybe for a lot of us, right, there might be a next level, which looks like the unknown, looks like maybe there is some fear. And I'd love for you to speak into that. Any stories that you want to tie in. Maybe there was a time where you felt really afraid and you took
Yeah.
a leap of faith. I'd love to hear what that was like for you and how you find active surrender when things may not be going as planned. Maybe they're taking longer. Maybe there's some little hiccups along the way. What have you learned, and how can you share your wisdom and perspective on fear, especially around the unknown?
Yeah. Well, so this is such an interesting inquiry. So, in the recognition of love, when love is known, everything is known everywhere at once. So, when we feel a sense of fear, trepidation, or inhibition, or complacency, or quite frankly, just like terror to move forward in our lives, we're frozen, in a space that seems like we are stuck. We're not. What's happening is we're not certain of love's presence. We have momentarily forgotten that love is the only one here. And so, there's a space and place in my life. I'll just bring in a very tangible example of where this was incredibly alive for me. I had been working in Fortune 500 corporate America, and I was working between 80 and 100 hours a week for years. So I was
Wow.
minimal sleep. I mean, I went home late at night. I woke up like I barely saw the light of day, like living my life. I was
Wow.
always working. And my soul got to a space where it was like, I'm going to burst if something doesn't change. Like my soul wanted to expand so profoundly, and I felt so contracted and squeezed into the space that I had put myself in that environment. And I was like, I have to make a radical change. And so, I mean, I had everything that I could have dreamed of at that time. I had, bless you. I had the relationship, I had the money, I had the career, I had all the things. And something in me was like, give away everything that you own, pack one backpack, and drive to the other side of the country. And I was like, that's a pretty tall order. And I was like, okay, but because when you get those signals, they're so strong. Like it would have been more painful to ignore it than to like actually just go for it by listening. And so I did. I gave every single thing that I owned at that time to a women's shelter. I packed one backpack, so very like minimal basics that I needed. I hopped into my car and I drove across the country, had no plan, had no like foresight around what I was going to do, how I was going to continue to
Did you quit
support
your
my.
job?
I did. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I gave them a month's notice. I said I will train someone to do every single thing that I do, and I'm going for it. So it was everything away from family, away from friends, away from everything familiar. So it was this massive trust fall. I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen here. And it was that kind of like edgy, like rawness that you experience when you haven't slept in days or you're jet lagged or it was just raw is the best way that I can describe it. I felt exposed, everything that was so comforting and familiar was suddenly gone. And it was by my own choice, but I knew that I had to do it because my soul was requesting my expansion. And when that evolutionary force emerges within us, there's no ignoring it. It would just be, it would be too painful to ignore it. So I did. And I went out to, at that time, I was in the northeastern part of the States up near New York City. And I drove all the way out to the Pacific Northwest into Oregon and Seattle. And I started a completely brand new life. And I was like, okay, so I was incredibly resourced at that time. I was very blessed in that way, but I didn't have that much to live on for that long. Like I had to have a game plan for what I was going to continue to do in my life to really like thrive. And so when I got out there, I came from the space of, okay, if you have limitless resources and you are infinitely wealthy and you have everything that you don't even have to think about money, what would your soul actually choose? What would you do? What would you create? How would you invest your time and your energy and your creative resources? And I really, I looked at my life from that perspective. What is actually in deep resonance with my heart and my soul? And of course, it was a period of calibration to be able to maintain that center of operating from that space. But I began to really, and I had to move through so much fear in that process in my embodiment. I mean, I was just like, and it was silly because, and I see this with a lot of people that I serve still who are millionaires, in some cases have billions of dollars. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? Like and so but those things still exist within us because there's something deeper for us to unearth there. And I find that if fear is actually the opposite of love, what are we actually afraid of in our journey and our experience? Well, we're afraid that we're going to be met with something other than love's presence, whatever that looks like, whether it means we're going to get thrown off the edge if we step into this trust fall, if it means we're going to have no money, no house, no resources. And I know what that's like too. I mean, I've had moments in my life where when I was in college, I was working 3 jobs to put myself through school and pay for school. And that meant sleeping in my car some nights. And so I like really know what it is to be in the reality of that experience and then to also boomerang to the opposite end of that spectrum and the very real fears that come up for us in that space. And, those are actually some of the most humbling and profound moments in my journey that taught me that love is here and now, and love is always here for us. And we are that love. And our greatest service to life is to be that love and to operate from certainty of our awareness of love's presence. And that's really the root of all of it. It's really not about any of the other things that we make it about: the money, the relationship, the job, the home, the cars, the whatever, our legacy, even. It's not about any of those things. It is about love. And so, what will dissolve the fear of the unknown is the recognition that love is here and abiding in our certainty of that awareness.
Yes, I love that. And you shared a powerful question too. It's like, how would you move? How would you act if you knew that there was infinite everything, like
Yeah.
infinite love, infinite abundance? That's powerful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is there any wisdom that you have for anyone here who might be doubting their clarity? Let's say they're, contemplating a big life decision, buying a house, changing jobs, starting a new career, a new side hustle, moving across the country, or like you're about to move. And
Yeah.
what if they like can't feel that full body yes? Someone right now who's just looking for the clarity, but they keep bouncing between what's rational versus what they actually want.
Yeah, that is a fabulous question. I love this because this can go both ways, right? So sometimes that absence of clarity comes from an absence of alignment. That's all that's happening there. So it's like the logical mind, the analysis, all of that comes in when we're not fully operating in trust and faith and knowingness of who and what we are. And so it's like that. Okay, so let's tune into this from a couple of different spaces. One, there's like the full body yes of knowing. If I ask myself from a space of, I have infinite everything I could ever require, what would I choose? Which direction would I move in? And usually that asking from that space ignites a profound state shift. Like if I'm actually really happy, really healthy, really alive, totally resourced, what would I choose? And that could mean staying where you are currently. And that could mean revolutionizing your life. It could mean one of the two. So that analysis and that logic can be coming from a space of fear and scarcity going in either direction, because we often think of the leap as this radical shift in our entire life landscape. And actually, sometimes it's just a radical state shift. So being able to discern the difference of like, and I was actually just on a call with a client yesterday, and we were having this exact discussion because it was like, how do I know if this thing is right for me? And I'm like, well, ask yourself from this space, if everything was operating in divine alignment, where you currently are, would you want it? And the answer was yes. And I'm like, okay, great. So all we have to do now is get like help you shift into alignment. And in some cases, the answer to that might be, no, actually, I would love to be in this environment, this atmosphere, creating with these kinds of people and doing these things. And so it might be a total shift in our world, but it's really looking at, if everything were operating in its highest space and state, what would I choose?
Mm, that makes a lot of sense. I love that question and that reframe. I think that's so helpful for anyone here listening who's kind of going through that. And one of the things that you shared that I really loved is that it could be like the happiest thing could just be staying where you're at. I think a lot of times that's stagnation for people. Like they're worried, they feel like they constantly have to up level or change, but also there's the duality of not wanting change because change is scary. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's really this state change if you choose to stay in the present moment, if you're really happy with where you are, with where you're at.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of that too, because like the deeper root of that even is, how do I unlock limitless free energy flow, creative flow, divine alignment, like all of that energy that comes through that? Because really that is what people are looking for, is their infinite supply of free energy, of source energy, of feeling alive, feeling creative. And that actually has a lot to do with presence. I mean, am I holding on to the past and the future? Am I holding on to, like the recollection of what happened in the past? And so I'm trying to like keep myself safe in the present moment and prevent those things from happening again. So I'm like in a space of logic and analysis around things. Or am I future projecting, where it's like, I want my life to look in this exact specific way, and it doesn't look like that right now. Like all of these ways that our mind occupies time are ways to keep ourselves safe. We're strategizing plans and ideas and as a protection mechanism, so that we're always assured that we're going to be safe. But in that, we actually inhibit ourselves from unfolding our highest destiny and potential in this life, because it's all happening in the present moment. So if we can just release ourselves from the past entirely and not have to have this mega plan for the future, we're totally present here and now in divine alignment. Our ultimate future will inevitably unfold itself, and will resolve the past simultaneously, because our state now is shifting what the past and the future are simultaneously. And people often think of the past is fixed and the future is open and malleable, but actually both are malleable, and it's all contingent upon what we have going on now. So if we can actually liberate our mind from time, a lot of that, and we liberate a lot of that energetic density that we're holding on to by holding time in our awareness. Because a lot of that analysis
Mm.
comes from, I want to make sure that my future is perfect, and I want to make sure that I don't repeat these things in my past, or I want to, even the past was amazing and I want to recreate it, and what if I don't? And it just, we stagnate ourselves to the density of what we're holding in our mind.
I love that. Yeah, like shifting how we see time, being less bound by our perspective of what time is. Yeah. Fascinating. I love that. And that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. And I know you've got have an awesome free gift for us. I'd love for you to share about what that is. I know it's experiential and it's very abundant, so I'd love for you to talk about it.
Yeah, so this is a glorious gala of liquid gold truth transmissions, and it's 30 plus hours of amazing activations, meditations, wisdom transmissions, where I just get into these deeper mechanics of reality. Because, gosh, one of my greatest fascinations in this life is like what is the self? Who am I? What am I? And how do I operate? Like, how does the reality of my being actually work? So these things like energetic mastery and time and, you know, shifting from fear to love and operating from superabundance, all of these things, I delve into the intricacies and the nuance of in these transmissions to support people really with having a deeper understanding and knowledge of themselves and how to operate from their greatest power and aliveness in this experience so that they can flourish here and now. And really, that's the most important thing. Like, am I feeling free, alive, in love with life in each moment of my path unfolding? And so all of those transmissions are designed to support people with anchoring into that.
Thank you so much for offering that. That'll be linked right below this video. So make sure if you're watching, you check that out. And thank you so much, Solara. This has been such a fun conversation, such beautiful perspectives that you bring to the table. And thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.